Alright, so here we are in Austria for the RedBull Ring. And yeah, already race 10, especially after the last race there in Spain. Our first race win of our career here.
They told you about the new parts that have come in from the factory, right? Well, they're all fitted and good to go. I hope they do the trick.
Only a season and about a third of the season, just under half or so, to get our first career win. And hopefully we can carry that momentum into Austria, as we swapped it back over to our Rockstar Sprint helmet. Can't see it now, but you guys will see it in qualifying, as it doesn't seem like there's going to be really any rain throughout the race. We might get some during the race, might get some during second practice, but we'll have to wait and see with this second sprint race weekend of the season. So we're going to go ahead and knock out practice, and we'll see you guys there for qualifying. Alright, we're in Austria for qualifying after one practice session, about 2 seconds, less than 2 second gap between our soft and medium tires. And yeah, so 1:05.6 is a provisional time for our soft tires. We're going to be coming around the last corner here, 1:06.2, so a little bit of improvement based off of practice. It was a good enough run to go into Q2, the second run didn't improve. We're coming around for our first run of Q2. A little bit of a slip up there as we're coming out of the corner and putting the power down in 1:05.7. So we're improving from last qualifying. And it's going to be qualifying 3, I believe, at this point. Where, no, it's going to be the end of qualifying 2, where we slightly improve, about 1.18 improvement into Q3. So this provisional P3 from Q2 to Q3. And our one and only run that ran good here in Q3 for a top 10 run for the sprint race, and snapped above us here at the end as well for the 1:05.4.
We're all ready for tomorrow's race, but before we begin, let's have a quick look at those who'll be fronting the grid. Hamilton, Verstappen, and George Russell. Well, that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow as we head into the Grand Prix.
Alright, yeah, so pretty good running. Provisional P3 for Q1 and 2. And then P5 here for Q3. And then not enough time to run our final run of the qualifying session. So I'm glad that we didn't drop down that much after last 2 drivers crossed the line after our first runs. But yeah, third row start next to Carlos Sainz and ahead of Sergio Perez. So we're looking pretty good for the race here in Austria for the sprint race and then the main race. So let's get right to it.
So it's all about speed in today's sprint. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Russell, Norris, Johnson, Sainz, Perez, Leclerc, Gasly, Oscar Piastri, Bottas, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Sargent, Joe, Mick Schumacher, Jackson, Ocon, and Cali Meyer. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. Here we go then. The formation lap is underway ahead of today's sprint. As all the cars take their positions on the grid, the final preparations have been made, and all that's left is for the drivers to deliver on track.
Alright, so here we are wrapping up our formation lap for Our first sprint race. So everybody running the softs. I thought about going in the mediums to save softs for the race, but we went ahead and went with the softs because we might as well. Because yeah, sprint race, and we didn't see how well our hard tires went in practice actually after practice 3. But everybody's up to the grid. We're starting in P5 next to Carlos Sainz. Our 5 red lights are off. And everybody's off to a pretty good start. You can see Hamilton moving off to the inside, trying to cover off the other 2 drivers of Russell and Verstappen. And we go out wide, side by side with, I believe that was Sergio. No, we're side by side with Carlos Sainz, Perez, and Gasly. We're side by side behind us as we're coming up the hill here in Sector 1. And we go out wide, give as much room as we can to Carlos Sainz. That way we can carry our speed through the turn. Holding on to P5 here is Lando Norris, about 6 tenths ahead already. So we could have definitely had a better out of turn 3, I believe that was. We're starting our downhill section and trying to close the gap between ourselves and Lando Norris, but you can see the gap gaining as we're 0.75 behind now, just around 7 tenths or so. So we have a snap of oversteer there, and we're now back side by side with Carlos Sainz fighting for P5 here in Sector 2. Coming into Sector 3, that double right-hander, or the back-to-back right-handers to the main straight. We ended up pushing Carlos Sainz back a little bit too far, a little bit too aggressive there as we dropped back behind Sergio Perez. As he's going to be making our way to lap 3. And at this point, Sergio Perez is able to catch up to us, and we give him the room on the inside. We almost went 4 wide there with Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly. We hold the outside line. We're side by side with Perez. We don't have the DRS, so Perez is going to be able to take advantage of that with DRS. And we hold the outside line, so we give way to Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. A snap over there as we come down the hill, and we're only lost of 1 position so far. Gasly takes up the position against Carlos Sainz, and we're almost halfway through the sprint race. So just trying to take it easy here as Gasly now 2 tenths behind us. Keeping the mirror on the right side, he tries to take the inside on this second to last corner, and holding the outside line. We get a warning for that track limits. There is see Valtteri Bottas right there next to us as well. So Sainz lost another position. So the 2 Alpines behind me fighting for P6 as we're starting lap 4. So we're halfway through the race at this point. And we're fighting for position against Pierre Gasly. Piastri is able to hold off against Bottas, making a pass up into P8. And at this point, it seems like we're pretty clear ahead of Gasly to hold on for a little bit. 2.4 seconds behind Sergio Perez. But through Sector 2, on lap 4, Gasly's trying to make a move on us. See the train of Gasly, Piastri, Bottas behind us. Gasly trying to make a move on the inside, same as he did earlier, not too long ago. I believe it was on the last lap. Snap of oversteer there. We almost go out on track limits. We didn't get a warning for that time. We have DRS. Piastri is following as well. We hold the inside line to try to make a dive bomb, but we end up pushing Gasly to the inside. That's what we wanted. We wanted to hold Gasly on the inside for turn 1, and that up turn 3 at the top of the hill. And we have the DRS to hold him off. So Gasly still there, P7. Piastri, Sainz, Bottas dropping back down to P10. Carlos Sainz being able to hold off against that. Sainz and Piastri are side by side. Behind us as we're lap 5 now. Verstappen back up the front. Russell P2, Norris P3, Hamilton P4, Perez P5. You can see 4.9 seconds now as we dip into that gravel behind Sergio Perez. So our top 5 is basically long gone. And you can see Pierre Gasly making a move there as we miss our braking point. And then we also lose our position against Carlos Sainz. A little bit of a bad angle as we have a snap of oversteer. Piastri back behind us, trying to move to the inside to make a move. We give him that room, but it looks like there's contact from Gasly. Damage on his vehicle may have been in front wing, so he's coming in. We end up side by side with Valtteri Bottas. A little bit of contact there. It slots in behind us. You can see Magnussen up in the P10. Hulkenberg having to come into the pits as well. Looks like he may have done that, or he looks like he's fighting for position by the way the names are changing. But if Pierre Gasly back in P20, and on the final lap, we have Valtteri Bottas behind us. We miss our braking point here on this left-hander, and then we miss our point here on this left-hander, and Bottas tries to make a move on the inside. You can see him going off into the gravel there with a missing tire. Here's that perspective of his onboard coming up behind us. You can see we miss our braking point. A little bit too much brakes there as we hold that outside line. And he tries to make a move for the inside. So we come in on him, and he gets smashed into the wall. Well, almost into the wall. But yeah, that's not going to be too much for Alpine to be happy about. And luckily we didn't get a penalty for that. So we're going to be finishing decently.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
Welcome from the beautiful Styrian Mountains for another chapter in the story of the Austrian Grand Prix. It's one of the shortest laps on the calendar today then, with 7 rights and just 3 lefts, making up the 10 corners of this high-speed circuit. Turn 2 is barely a corner at all. They'll be flat out through there, a left-hand kink into the uphill braking zone of turn 3. Turns 1, 3 and 4 are all potential opportunities to overtake. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position. And Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Hamilton, Norris, Perez, Oscar Piastri, Johnson, Leclerc, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Joe, Sargent, Tsunoda, Ocon, Jackson, Mayer, Gasly, Sainz, Bottas and Mick Schumacher. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me again for today's race. Let's talk about Johnson. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
All right, so, well, we didn't have the pace for the soft tires in the sprint, but hopefully we do have the pace for the mediums and the hards. And why is this already customized? I do not know. We'll have to go in and take a look and see if there's anything better than that. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and take a crack at the main race and see if we can still finish in the top 10. So let's get to it.
Here we go then. The formation lap is underway and the track temperature looks warm. And that may or may not play into some of the team's hands in today's race. We're almost ready to start the race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
All right, so we're a little bit shaken up, starting back in P7 after that contact with Valtteri Bottas, the dive bomb to the inside on the last lap of the sprint. And he took the risk, and he went for it, and it cost him. So he's going to be starting back in the pack when he's starting next to Oscar Piastri. As you can see, our teammate also took a penalty. So Schumacher back in P20. Our 5 red lights are on, and we are side by side with Piastri. We're off with Red Bull. Perez off to a bad start, so we move to the outside. The Mercedes of, I believe, Hamilton pushes us outside as well. The team McLaren's moving on the inside. The Red Bull of Perez, we slip past him. He gets a little bit of contact there with Piastri as we're side by side with him coming up the hill, moving past turn 2. And like the sprint, we move to the outside. Leclerc comes up on the inside. We give him the space as much as we can. Hold that outside line. Sergio Perez there behind us as well. Yellow flag during turn 3, but it is because it's a slow corner. So no damages as of yet. But Carlos Sainz back there in P20. Obviously something went wrong. as his teammate Leclerc is up behind us in P7 and about 4/10 behind Piastri already. So same situation as the sprint race. The top 5 seem to have a good pace, and I don't know how to feel about these mediums right now on the lap 1, but we're trying to fend off Leclerc as Perez is in his toe as well. So Piastri about a second or so ahead of us, and Leclerc moving out wide, coming in contact with us to push him to the inside, keep our line straight. And a stupid ghosting mechanic to avoid like potential wrecks. It's kind of taking away from the realism of the race, but there is a scrape there with Leclerc coming up to the hill. And at this point, I feel sorry for Perez, but he's stuck there behind us as we're side by side.
Okay, you've
coming
lost
up the
access
hill.
to one of the gears. We've lost one of the gears due to a fault in the gearbox.
And yeah, so race 10 in Austria, and we're having gearbox issues already. So it's getting pretty close to the time to swap out to our next gearbox. And Perez fighting Leclerc for a position. And lap 7, he's still fighting for a position, but this time it's for us. He's trying to make a move on the inside of turn 1. And we give him that space. Almost getting pushed out wide. And he has the faster tires. So we do end up getting DRS on this turn. Coming up this hill, we move to the outside and keep that racing line because I can never make the apex of this turn. And the Haas of Magnussen is trying to fight for a position against Leclerc. He moves on the outside as well behind me. Who uses my toe to try to make up a position. Up in a P8, as you can see Perez is now ahead of us, so we're fighting to catch up to Perez. Lap 9 now, start of lap 9, little snap there. Magnussen 8/10 back behind us. And yeah, so Perez within DRS, 3.1 seconds behind Piastri, so top 6 still fighting for the top 6 points. We push Perez wide to the outside as we take advantage of that. Now we're 3.5 seconds in total behind the top 5 as myself and Perez were fighting. So Magnussen fighting for position against Perez now for P7. So as of right now, we're in the clear to hold off and try to take care of these tires till we come in for the pits. Lap 11, we have some drivers starting to come into the pits. So we have, I believe, Hamilton and looks like, yes, Hamilton, Verstappen, Norris come into the pits. And it looks like Joe may be coming in as well. I'm not too entirely sure. I wasn't focused on that. So provisional, Russell, Piastri, and myself. If we all come into the next pit stop for the next lap on the end of lap 12, start of lap 13, it could be a close fight depending on how far ahead they are. But Piastri, 8 seconds behind Russell. And we're about 2 seconds behind Piastri. But Piastri is right there ahead of us. And Perez went in. So I don't believe Perez actually went in this lap, or the previous lap. So you see Perez on the outside there on the track making his move as we're hoping for a good pit stop here. Try to close the gap on Piastri. So you can see Piastri leaving there and Russell ahead of us as well. You see Lando Norris and the McLaren pitting last lap and passing us up into P7. You can see the other two, I believe that was Ocon and Hulkenberg behind us in the pits. But as we're coming out of pits, we're going to have a yellow flag coming up here in Sector 1, the end of Sector 1, start of Sector 2. And by the charts, it's going to be George Russell pulling off to the side. So we're coming up here out of Turn 3. A little snap of oversteer trying to warm up these tires. You can see George Russell there on the left. And he has a DNF for an engine failure. We're going to be swapping over to his perspective here. Coming out of the pits behind the Red Bull, I believe Max Verstappen. Could have been wrong. Couldn't really tell by the livery from this far away. But as he's coming up the hill, you could hear right there, he's letting off the gas and most likely an engine failure here in Austria. So just be glad that it's not us this time around, as I believe, yes, that's the Red Bull of Max Verstappen there, and the Sauber and the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, and other cars following. So that's going to be unfortunate for George Russell here in Austria. And at this point, we have a big enough gap behind Piastri as the rest of our drivers come in for a pit as we start lap 14. So we're up in P5, and we have about 2 seconds or so a gap between us and the person behind us. So at this time, it's Leclerc in P6, Perez behind in P7, and we have about 10, 11 laps to go until the end of the race. So we're cruising, trying to take care of these hard tires. As Russell is still sitting there, no yellow flag. I'm glad that we didn't get a yellow flag for that. But on the final lap, we have Sergio Perez ahead of the Ferrari, fighting us for position. He is in our tow. He's running a faster set of tires, I believe, as we do see. No, he's on hards as well. He tries to make a move on the inside there. We fend him off. And that's going to be good enough for a P5 finish here in Austria.
All right, race over. Take care of the car on the way in.
A fantastic team effort then to secure victory here in the Styrian Alps. The drivers are en route to the podium as we speak. What a fantastic win for the Red Bull team. They performed exceptionally today, keeping us firmly on the edge of our seats throughout the entirety of the race. Congratulations to everybody at the team. So let's see what effect this result has had on the drivers' standings. Well, that lead at the top has somewhat shrunk today. Some amazing talent out on the track today. But Anthony, who would you pick as your driver of the day?
Max Verstappen seemed to just effortlessly weave through the other drivers today without a care in the world. He was definitely my driver of choice.
It's time to check out the constructors' standings. No change in the top spot then, but with today's points, their hold on that lead is getting weaker. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport action. But with more races lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One.
All right, so a P5 finish after a P7 start after the sprint race. And what a fight between myself, Sergio Perez, and Charles Leclerc. Myself and Sergio Perez on the hards, Charles Leclerc on the mediums. And I honestly thought as soon as I came out on those hards, I had made the mistake for a strategy. And I was hoping for a safety car, a late safety car, but the Mercedes of George Russell, I was surprised it did not cause a safety car where he was parked, as he was there in sector 2. And yeah, so Aiden Jackson up into P13 from P15, Carlos Sainz up into P12 from P18, and then Charles Leclerc getting driver of the day that it showed, but not what they said. Only he gained one position. I believe that should have gone to. Honestly, believe that should have gone to Carlos Sainz, but I have no idea. Mick Schumacher starting in P20 for a what I believe at the time was a grid penalty for parts. But yeah, so a decent weekend here in Austria, as we get a total of 12 points. And that kind of helps our deficit. But Red Bull, Max Verstappen coming back for 32 points this weekend. And trying to close the gap after the last few races that he has had. So we'll have to wait and see if Red Bull can come back on the championship, as Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are leading Max Verstappen in P3 for the driver standings. Only 9 points, a four-way fight for the Drivers' Championship right now, and we're just under halfway through the season. Sergio Perez now under Max Verstappen yet again for that, as we go into race number 11 after this. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.